welcome to the 5th podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alicia James.
Hey, and I'm Marcus Hodges, and we're glad you're here today.
Today we have an exciting guest. I think the absolute world of this woman. She knows this. She's a dynamic leader in the criminal justice arena, in the professional arena as an executive director. She has a lengthy, extensive history in the community corrections area. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Veronica Cunningham introduce herself. Veronica, thank you for joining us, coming on the 5th, our first guest.
I am so excited. Thank you guys for inviting me. And I think when you said, she's a lengthy career, that's your nice way of saying she's really old.
Of course.
But by way of introduction, again, I've been in this space for a long, long time. I actually started my career in my hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana, as a probation and parole officer there. And then I moved to Texas and worked in the parole system for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and worked my way up the ranks to become the director of that department of 2,400 staff members and a $200 million budget. So it was an exciting time, really was. I later left that organization and moved to Chicago and became the chief of the probation department for Cook County, which is Chicago and its surrounding areas. And it's just been quite a journey for me. So I have to tell you that this is an amazing time for a person that has had a long career like mine to see what's happening in the justice system in general, but more specifically in community corrections. And so now, of course, after my time as a practitioner, I landed at the American Probation and Parole Association, where I am its executive director, or CEO, as you will. And I'm excited to carry that banter into the next chapter of my professional life. So thank you guys so much for inviting me. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're excited for you to be here and to hear about the wonderful things that the APPA has going on, to pick your brain a little bit about kind of this, this evolution, if you will, of criminal justice reform. And where we are and why it's so important for us not to lose momentum and seize the moment. And so I'm not going to steal any Marcus's thunder. He's going to start off with drop her a question, Marcus. Let's start picking the queen's brain.
I was waiting. I mean, we were throwing softballs, so I was waiting. But first of all, thank you for what you do. You have been a pioneer in this field for a long time, and I've watched you from afar. Stole some of your ideas when you were in Cook and then when you were out in Texas. So really appreciate all that you've done to advance the justice field. So with all of your experience and all that you've seen on the adult level and what you've seen on the juvenile level and seen as APPA, why is the need for reform now? Why is this such a hot topic? And through your experiences, why should we be transforming this criminal justice system?
Oh my God, the easy answer is why not?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's, again, having been in this space since the late 70s, I have been actually kind of stunned by some of the things we did wrong. And let's just be honest, there's no perfect profession. So I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that we have a lot to do. So when you think about starting from a space where all you were doing was being a bean counter as a probation or parole officer, how many did you, how many times did you come to the office? Did you keep your appointment? Can you do that? Can you do? That's not good. That's not going to change lives. That's not going to increase or enhance success stories.
Yeah.
So why we need to transform and why now? It's just the best time ever, because we have people like you young folks who are okay with being the voice. The voice may be a little different than what your manual says or your procedural book in your organization says. We have to speak up and speak out. And we've not done that. We've been great, wonderful, good government employees, and we've done what we're supposed to do based on the standards we've been given. And that hasn't worked. And you know the saying, if you always do what you've always done, you get the same results.
Yeah.
So that's why our recidivism rates don't look like they should. I mean, obviously our recidivism rates are bad. They look awful. So do a lot better. I really do think, and even though it's a bigger piece than just the racial part, although I hope we have some discussion around that, I think the George Floyd matter amped this thing up to the nth degree for us.
Yeah.
It made us realize that in that racial justice space, there were lots of injustices. And then the justice system overall, because it includes so many people that look like us, we need to fix some things. And so the time is now. I think if we don't take advantage of this period of time, we will never fix this thing. You see so many things that we've, for example, people who have substance abuse issues, right? Or people who have mental health issues. Yesterday, pre our discussions about transforming and reforming the system, we just kind of put those people on a waiting list for substance abuse clinic. They might have been on that waiting list for 3 months or 6 months. At this point, that dog won't hunt. We do that. We can't put people on waiting lists and expect them to succeed. We've got to get up and do something. We've got to have collaborations and partnerships with substance abuse organizations and not-for-profits that are doing that type of work. So yeah, the timing is absolutely perfect. Rest his soul, George Floyd gave us all a new voice. Have one. Well, actually, he does have one through us. So,
yeah.
Let's talk about that. I mean, because we're all practitioners, and the great thing about this podcast is it's for practitioners, about practitioners. We're talking about. I think what bothers me, and I think you're right, George Floyd was the highlight. It was the tipping point, as you say. But we all know that transformation was needed before George Floyd.
Oh my God, yes.
And what gets me is, why didn't we have this same energy? Why did it take Ahmaud Arbery? I mean, let's be honest. It was a series of events that capitulated with George Floyd. Why did it take us that long for that to be the tipping point, when we know as practitioners the whole time this system was unjust, it was unfair, it was not equitable, but we had to wait for the tipping point to act? What's your thoughts about that?
You know what? There's strength in numbers. There is strength in numbers. So pre-Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and all of the other individuals that have become the topic of discussion, before them, it was just us. The justice system, it was just us.
Yeah.
Those of us who are boots on the ground trying to get the work done, but with limited resources, with limited support. But now, because of this new world that we live in with technology and video phones and all of that kind of stuff, and other people, the lay people, John Q. Citizen sees what's going on and recognize that it's not fair and it's not just. Now we have some people to support what we are trying to do internally. One of the things I will say that just came to mind, one of the things that really we have to make sure doesn't happen during this period of time is, I'm hearing there are a lot of organizations that are in this space, the amazing organizations, the Pews of the world and Arnold Ventures and a Reform Alliance, Van Jones Group, and just so many that are tapping into this conversation and doing great things. And we want them and we need them at the table.
Yeah.
But if people don't listen to the practitioners, you're not going to get anything done, because a lot of the work they're doing and they're espousing are changing the laws, and we need the laws to change, but really focused on legislative policies and things like that. But if you don't keep your eye on the prize, which are the people who work in this segment of the criminal justice system, the probation and parole officers who are really doing the work, you've not done anything. So you can say, let's pass a law to reduce the amount of time a person is sentenced on probation, or amount of time a person spends on parole. But if you don't get into the inners, and that person still has a probation or parole officer that's not properly trained, that has a whole bunch of biases that we can't fix, and the list goes on, we have not done anything. So as again, strength in numbers, there are a lot of people supporting the work we're doing, and I say, let's take advantage of this time.
That is a great point. I mean, when you think about kind of the shift of the momentum, and I call it momentum because it was like kind of like trickles here, trickles there, and then, like you said, like a wave of support. One thing I think we've all noticed and we've all talked about just kind of in conversation is that it seems, and you mentioned it, like John Q. Citizen now is having discussion about what does criminal justice reform look like. And you also mentioned some of those people who are in pop culture who are having this conversation. How important would you say that it is for individuals to take on even if they're not like a Kim Kardashian, right? Or a Van Jones, how important would it be for individuals to have a vested interest in what's going on with criminal justice reform on a local level?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I love that question. So I was just talking to someone yesterday about the whole issue of racial justice.
Mhm.
And this person said just that before George Floyd, the criminal justice system was just, to that person was just the police and, get people getting arrested. That's all that person thought about, right? So now it's different. And I was sharing with her that with respect to racial matters, none of my family members work in the justice system. They work in mostly banking and things like that, right? My sister works for AT&T. And when the George Floyd matter occurred, the good news is the CEO of AT&T, he is, justice is top of mind to a large extent for him. And he's looking how that company can do more. So she and a couple of her friends, lay people, who the only thing she knew about was what I told her about criminal justice, right? About community corrections and probation pro. She knows I've been doing that for a million years, of course. Mm-hmm. She now has started a racial justice committee.
Nice.
AT&T.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a perfect example of lay people saying, it's not just the people who
mm-hmm.
justice system, it's not just their problem. This is an American problem. This is all of us. And so I see those types of conversations being sprouted up all over the country. Mm-hmm. Every time I talk to a family member of mine, and it's something I have to admit I didn't do in the past. Yeah. I mean, my husband and my son knew about what I did, and I'd come home and talk about this was good and this was not so good. But in terms of having that conversation with the larger family or with friends, I didn't have that until now.
Right.
And we all have to make sure that we espouse that to everyone. And then you ask them, what can you do? Mm-hmm. Or what can I do? Then we can help them to move along the line to do something. So, yeah.
You make great points. I mean, so this is comments on some of your points that you made that I love. Mm-hmm. This is not just a criminal justice issue. Mm-hmm. This is a humanity issue.
That's a hashtag. Can we hashtag that? We got that's a whole hashtag right there in the movement.
And I know you will. It's a movement.
Yeah, it is.
This what scares me though. When you bring all these other entities in, all right, they'll hop on to the next thing. And if we don't seize this moment that we're in now, we're gonna be left behind.
Yeah.
And the point is, I don't mind people coming in to look at our system. We know our system is not perfect, and we need to collaborate and we need help. Yes. But as practitioners, we've got to be at the table. And when practitioners come to the table, we have got to be transparent about what we were good at, what we were not so good at, so we can further this conversation. So when the other people jump onto something else, this movement continues no matter what.
Yeah.
Another thing why we're doing this podcast, because we want to empower practitioners to change, to be in the forefront for change and not take a back seat. Because you're right. When I started in corrections, I didn't talk about it. It was like it was the Secret Service. I know what you did. You didn't talk about, and I don't know why. When people go in the medical field, they're doctors, everybody's, how's your day? No, I didn't want to tell people that during my day, I was seeing people, I was collecting urine, I was doing this. Yeah. You don't talk about your day.
Yeah.
So you were the Secret Service, and then you wonder why you were dictated upon, because we never had these real conversations.
Yeah.
So the key is podcasts and everything else is to really empower practitioners to assist in the change process.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. The only person I would really talk to, as I think about it, before I got married and had a son and everything, the person I would talk to about my job was my dad. And the reason I talked to my father about it was because he was so concerned, right? Yeah. Being a young female going into some really tough situations, right, in neighborhoods. And so every single day he would ask me, honey, how was your day? You didn't, no danger, right? Or you have to be careful. And he would just remind me to be careful. But you're right. Other than that, it was just it wasn't anything that we were proud of. And because we weren't making the kind of progress that we knew in our hearts and minds we should make. And so to that end, the other thing about my job is my father worked at a company that supplied mud to all drills, right? We lived in Louisiana, Texas next door, right? And so the good news, in addition to having engineers and all those types of people work in his company, it wasn't his company, but the company he worked for, there were also people at the very line level. So they could hire an entry-level person and train to do certain things. So a long time ago, I recognized that my job as a probation and parole are combined in Louisiana, that my job was to help these individuals. And a big part of helping them was to find a job. And I don't know how that gets lost in the equation so often. That's not a huge part of what these people who we supervise need, right? Would encourage my dad to hire as many as he could. And that was an anomaly for my coworkers. They're like, oh, your dad's helping them get a job? Yes, absolutely is. That's what it was all about. So yeah, so that's really the only person I ever really talked to my job with. The rest of it, I just kind of kept it quiet. Yeah.
You know, those employment pieces, I think those supplemental pieces of supervision are so critical, right? We talk about officers and their roles, and I wholeheartedly agree. Helping officers to see, you know, their framework different, how they can impact their work, their clients differently, will have a tremendous effect and a tremendous impact on reduction of technical violations and reduction of returns and reduction of overall recidivism. But you know, those important pieces, right, that go to that comprehensive supervision model, like education specialists, employment specialists, case management. I mean, all too often, one of the things we were talking about, the shift in the momentum, all too often, you know, we saw in the past where if we had to do budget cuts, those supplemental positions were abolished, right? Exactly. But it's mind-boggling because it takes more than just an officer, you know, even the best officer, right? Like coming in, having someone sit before you, or you going out to do a home visit, the behavioral change, it takes more than just the officer-client interaction. And so, like you mentioned, like just, you know, helping the officer to see, number one, and Dr. Brian Lovins, he always talks about being a coach, right, versus being a referee, and the difference, and really helping for officers to see them as a coach, as well as challenging the system, challenging organizations, challenging legislators to not, you know, zero out the budget for these very important other supplemental pieces of supervision. And I say supplemental, and I kind of say that resistantly because I'm thinking like, it's an important part, you know, of the work. And so, I'm gonna get off my bandwagon there because I'm just so that's so passionate. But you mentioned it, and Marcus mentioned it too. And I wrote it down. I got a whole thing of notes because Veronica dropping jewels over here. America, Marcus, you said about America jumping onto something else. And I know we're going to talk about the racial injustice, and that's it's an underlying theme that we really want to highlight with all of our guests, the opportunity for more equality, for racial, you know, inclusion, and having this, not only just racial, all different types of diversity, inclusiveness in the criminal justice system, and being more aware of that. But Marcus, you mentioned about, you know, maybe America jumping on to the next bandwagon. And we've seen that time and time again, no matter what the issue. And Veronica, you mentioned that we can't afford to jump to it. Like, y'all better not jump on another bandwagon because this is too important. Veronica, I would love to hear your thoughts on, do you think that because we had an African-American president at one point in time, that the world, the country kind of thought, okay, issues of race relation in the justice system and without, or with, you know, in the regular day-to-day operation, you know, that maybe we don't have a race issue anymore, or maybe the racial issues in the justice system just aren't as apparent as they used to be. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh, I am super happy to. So don't want to say too much or seem too boastful or anything like that, but I know the Obamas. I won't say that I know them close and personal, but Michelle and I used to go to the same hairstylist, and we did for almost 15 years. Yeah. And so we've actually had conversations under the hairdryer, right?
Why didn't you tell me that? That's the coolest thing. Okay.
Yeah, and then I got to know President Obama when he was a senator here, or I'm in Texas right now, but when he, senator in Illinois, and I actually visited him several times to talk about things like justice, not necessarily, we weren't talking justice reform, then we were talking things that you talked about earlier about resources for probation officers so they can help individuals find jobs, get education, substance abuse, all of that kind of stuff. And ultimately, President Obama actually did his very first book signing at my church. And
wow.
who helped organize that, as well as when he was deciding to run for the presidency. I was a part of the group that hosted his party with my dentist. So just a lot of circle. So when you say when he became the president, did the people sense that racial issues were not existing? So digging into that relationship a little further, one of my dear friends worked in his administration as a president. Do you know, she told me on one particular occasion that he received a minimum of 1,000 hate emails each and every day. I didn't say every week. I didn't say every month.
Wow.
Every single day. So to put it in a nutshell, what we saw on January 6th, that group of individuals who have that kind of discontent, I will say, to use a nice word, there are a lot more of them out there. And so as an African American myself, I've never felt that racism had gone away. What I found when President Obama was elected was there were some really thoughtful, anti-racist young people of all colors who knew that he was the best candidate for the job, and they cast their vote for him. And never felt it went away.
Yeah, that's interesting. Go ahead, Marcus. I'm sorry.
No, you hit something. A couple of things. I think you're right. I mean, we look at the news every single day. And I guarantee you, when you look at the news, there's not one session across this country where it's not dealing with race. And for years, we just pushed that to the side. And we say we elected a president of color and it's gone away. No, it hasn't gone away.
Right.
We just elected a person of color. We elected the best person to be president. And that's all we're trying to do in this whole notion of reform. I mean, will we ever get rid of systematic racism? No, I don't think we'll ever get rid of it. It's been here since the beginning of time. But we can recognize it and we can call it out for what it was. And that's how you affect change. Do you ever get rid of it? I mean, and look, I'm an optimist. I would hope we would get rid of it. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that will ever happen or occur. But as practitioners, we better call it out. When we see black and brown people being disproportionate, whether it's on technical violations, whether it's going back to prison, whether it's being arrested, we got to call it out. And we got to continue to call it out, because that's how change comes about. Because the more you call it out, people got to own their stuff. Quiet about it. People won't own their stuff. I'm going to make you own your stuff. And if you still make that decision to do that, then you already told me what you was anyway. And I'm still going to. That's what practitioners, that's what we have to do moving forward. But here's your question. Politics. You know, you talk about reform and we talk about this culture of politics that we're in right now. And a lot of people think transformation is soft. You know, I mean, let's talk about that. Transformation is soft. We don't want people placed on probation. We don't want to legalize marijuana. It's soft on crime. And soft on crime does not get people elected at all. So how this role of politics plays in transformation, and what can we do about that?
Well, first of all, you know, there's a combination of accountability and safety, but yet freedom and opportunity.
Yes.
So it's not a one size fits all kind of thing, right? So the net goal is public safety. That's the net goal of everything we do in every single aspect of the justice system. And ours, to me, is even more important, because when you think about people who end up in the justice system, they have the small interactions with other components of the system. So they go, something happens, the police arrive, the police take the name, oh, we got you, we put you in handcuffs, we're taking you down to the jail, fill out our report when they have court to testify, but we're done, police department, right? Then they go, they're in the custody of the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department has to, feed them and, keep them prepared to go to court and keep them in custody and all of that kind of stuff, but not a whole lot of interaction while they're in the jail pending their case, right? And again, get them to and from the judge and the sheriff's office finish, right? Go before the judge. Judge may see them a few times on motions, et cetera, then they sentence them, then the judge is done. So short period of time. What happens then is then they go to prison. Now, some of them are there quite a long time, as we know. And again, I'm so excited about the look of what prison systems look like now, the difference in how prison systems look. So you guys saw on our APPA Virtual Training Institute of my interview with a couple of giants in the Department of Corrections, and they talked about how, because they have probation and or parole under their areas of responsibility, how that was just as important to them as the prison and the custody part of it was to them, right? So that's the good news. But there's still a lot of Department of Corrections that just have the prison piece. So let's just look at that. And again, people go there, they sit, they do their time, and then guess what? They come out on parole, or in the judge's case, they come out of jail onto probation. Those individuals stay with community supervision, probation and parole longer than any other component of the justice system. And yet we are the least funded, the least talked about, the least, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So that has to change. And you guys are asking such great, I don't even feel like these are questions. This is just
this is a conversation.
It's a great conversation because I'm also in my brain, I can't not hold on to something you said earlier, Alicia, about resources and helping people find employment. So in Cook County, and I don't know if they still have this, but they had, when I was there, we had resource officers, people who had the same requirements as a probation officer, but they didn't have a caseload. Their only responsibility was to identify support systems, services, products, resources for the people under supervision. So they're the ones who went out and met with prospective employers, get them to say, yes, I'll hire X number of people who would come to me as long as these are the requirements, et cetera, et cetera. They were the ones who made sure they knew how to help people get into GED programs, et cetera, et cetera. That should be every department in America, if not the world.
Across the board.
Across the board should
Yep.
have a division within their department that's sourced up, not one person for a department of 1,000 people, 1,000 parole officers or 50,000 people on probation, a division. That's their dedication. Because guess what? The good news is there are some organizations out there that help people with criminal records find jobs, help them with education. And I think that's good. But I think where the rubber meets the road is having that kind of resource internally. So then you can really have a good understanding of what's working and what's not working. And that something came up on our VTI last week, and someone said something about, we have done a poor job of collecting the data. And when we collect the data, we collect failures, not successes. We had a resource group inside of each of our organizations. They're not counting, oh, this is how many people didn't report last month. This is the number of people who had positive UAs. It's the opposite. For people who had negative UAs. These are the number of people who did this and that, all in a positive vein. And I think if we did that kind of thing, when it's time to go to your budget body, right, to ask for more funding, and we got to talk about supervision fees too. I hope we get to that. I get excited. I'm gonna put my hands down all in front of
This may be a part two.
Huh? Yeah. So yes, when you go before your budget body, you can intelligently speak to why you need more funding and resources to do the job that you were hired to do as the head of a department.
That's gold right there. I mean, I think that is so key. And one of the points that you said that really stuck out is being prepared as a leader to have those conversations, right? And how many times did we hear leaders say, you know what, I don't have the manpower to even track the data to be able to have the argument. And it was kind of like slowing down, making sure that you have everything, policy, procedure, any type of technology, if it's Microsoft Excel, whatever that looks like, to be able to capture that information, then to be able to go forward. And so, I think what you're talking about spans across, and I do want to level set, because we were talking about politics a little bit early. This is a bipartisan podcast. We talk, from our specific, our personal views and experiences. And we've seen a lot of great work on the Republican side of the House as it relates to criminal justice reform, right? I know here in Tennessee, Governor Haslam, our former governor, was a powerhouse for criminal justice reform, and really led that effort courageously and boldly, and completely reshaped the Department of Correction. And Governor Lee, who's also a Republican, continues to do the same thing. Man, we have been having so much fun on this part 1 of conversation with Veronica. Next week, we're gonna dig in deeper and hit some really high points. So check us out for part 2 next week. We'll be back at you.